Hi everyone, welcome to the Cotton Edge Network. Congrats on being the first viewers of this channel. In this channel we shall be discussing the different aspects of life that are currently affecting men as we see today, spanning from political, financial, spiritual, religious, social, emotional or sentimental, and all kinds of different vibes that we see in society today. Today we shall be discussing something very important that I and a lot more of others have noticed in the African society today. And there's a great divide and misunderstanding between the African and African Americans. I have watched several videos of Africans dissociating themselves from African Americans and several other videos of African Americans dissociating themselves from Africans. And usually some of the reasons are legitimate, to be honest. But then we have to answer a couple of questions. And the more important question that we have to answer today is, who are African Americans and who are Africans? And before we dive into this subject, you should also think for yourself, and so that we can all arrive at a conclusion that is unanimous. First of all, African Americans are first called Africans. That should spark a thought in your mind, whether you like it or not. African Americans are first called Africans before American. That's the reason why. Now, there are a lot of people who are only aware of the transatlantic slave trade that occurred from the 16th to the 19th century. And a lot of African Americans do not draw their origins from this transatlantic origins or transatlantic slave trade, which is a very small percentile of what is actually true. But yes, there are a lot of black-skinned people who are not necessarily from the current present-day continent, Africa. But we are going to come to that in a little bit. Stay with me to the end, please, guys. Now, it is a known historical fact that Africans used to see far, navigate through and across the Atlantic way before Christopher Columbus ever did in the 1400s. Way before Christopher Columbus ever did in the 1400s, Africans had been crossing through the transatlantic. As a matter of fact, Herodotus, one of the known great Greek historians, wrote about King Ramses III and some of the adventures that he had to accomplish leading black-skinned Egyptians, because Egyptians are African and black-skinned from origin, across the Atlantic. We also have Abubakar II in 1311, who led more than 400 ships across the Atlantic, and 200 of those ships were known to be carrying gold and other expensive and highly valued things. And so it is known that Africans had already crossed the Atlantic and had already explored the Americas way before the Europeans ever did. These are historical facts, and that you can go check on on your free time, and I'm sparing you the hard labor because we are, if to look at academic conclusions, should arrive at the same truth because these are all historical facts. You should read the book Africa and the Discovery of the Americas by Leo Wiener, a professor at Harvard. Leo Wiener wrote about Columbus himself, who by himself acknowledged the fact that there were black skinned Indians who had moved from the South into the Americas, trading in gold tip spears. And you ask yourself the question, where does gold come from, right? I mean, they didn't have to move from the South, that's Africa, to the Americas to trade if there was no transatlantic seafaring at all, correct? So Columbus had already met Indians and black Africans, and there's a lot of evidence showing the deposition of the different cultural heritages that Africans had brought from Africa into the Caribbeans, into the Americas, right? You can see that everywhere in almost all Caribbean islands and South America, even North America, right? Different practices of voodoo, different cultural resemblances. The deities are all almost the same, you know, and we can come back to that another time, right? Because you just need to do a simple comparison on the internet, on Google, and you see that they have, you know, even call some of their gods the same name. As a matter of fact, Haitians have a term, they say, Moi c'est Igbo. That means I am Igbo. Igbo is from West Africa, Nigeria. So let us not lose focus here. Who are African Americans? It's the first question, and we're going to answer. We're going to arrive to the right answer just in a couple of minutes. Bear with me. I just want to make sure that the pillars for our understanding are all set up. All right? And so we have all this evidence that Africans had moved not only through the transatlantic slave system of over 300 years, and at certain times each year 35,000 or 30,000 Africans, you know, just to say in a roundup, 30 to 35,000 Africans were moved from Africa into the transatlantic, into the Americas per year. And at other times up to 85,000 Africans. And if we have to look at a rough figure, we would have around 15 to 25 million Africans at that time in the world actually moving into the Americas, not considering the already migrated Africans who had moved several centuries before. As a matter of fact, Abu Bakari had moved into the Americas, Abu Bakari II, right? You can go, you know, fact check on this. Abu Bakari II had already moved into Africa, into the Americas, roughly 180 years before Columbus had ever done. And some of these voyages were based on the previous adventures of other Africans. So, dear viewers, one thing that I want to make sure that we are understanding as of this point is the black men in America of African heritage When I mean African heritage, I'm not necessarily talking about the culture. I'm talking about the DNA. I'm talking about the roots and the history is African by that definition, by that standard. And that's why I asked the question to look and see that there's a reason why African Americans are first called Africans. And to make it a little bit soft for understanding, we have a current day African country called the Liberia, right? Called Liberia. Liberia was formed in 1918, if I'm not mistaken. 1918, and was formed by the American Colonization Society, the ACS. And the reason why the American Colonization Society actually created the Liberia is because at a time where black Africans who were previously slaves in America were beginning to become free and seek for their rights, and more importantly, black Africans were beginning to multiply and increase in number. The ACS decided to get a piece of land back in Africa where the blacks came from and to transport them back. And a great deal of Africans who were moved to America were brought back to Africa in the land called Liberia. You can go do another fact check and you will see what I'm saying is academically correct. And I know that some things that have to be switched here and there. I'm just talking roughly out of, out of the mind that, needs to be refreshed sometimes. So who are African Americans? African Americans are Africans who moved to Africa, either by slave trade or by the exploration attempts of previous generations of other Africans. Jamaica, for example, was formed when the British had fought a war against the Spaniards in the now known Jamaica, and the British won the war, of course, as we know it. And in the time of turmoil, the black African slaves at that time actually they took advantage of the opportunity, and then they moved into the hinterlands. They were called the Moors at that time. The Maroons, thank you, yeah. The Maroons. They were called the Maroons at that time. So we see that the Africans had been in America through both slavery and different exploration movements. We cannot all then say that Africans or the black men in America came only through slavery. However, you have to recognize that the gap between the periods where Africans were moving into the Americas and the slave trade era is a long span of time, and within the period of time of the exploration and the slave trade movement, a lot of Africans had died from plagues and diseases, not just the Africans and other ethnicities that existed there. And the other ethnicities were basically Indians, right? Now a lot of questions come as a matter of fact, which other ethnicities actually existed in the Americas? And that is a question to be answered for another day. However, you need to realize that because you have a whole continent doesn't mean that there were a lot of people existing at that place at that time. I use the word actually a lot. My bad. So there are many islands today, Antarctica, where you don't have people living in, right? So it's not an obligation for humans to just populate every single land that they come across, right? And we are talking about current days. So African Americans are Africans basically who moved to America, right? And Africans are way beyond those who are in the so-called motherland, the map, right? The land, the mainland Africa. Africans also comprise of the islands of close proximity. As a matter of fact, you are Caucasian whether you're in Africa, whether you are in Europe, whether you're in America. And that is not a question that is being asked. It's not something we can deny. It is only the African man who strives very hard to disintegrate his own values and to dissociate himself from himself, because he has been thought to hate himself. And yeah, that's the reason why you see a lot of Africans hating on the black Americans, and black Americans hating on the Africans. But when you go to Africa as a black American or African American, the treatment is different. Why? Because there's a certain sense of colonialization, neo-colonization, and entitlement with the things of this world that separate us, whether we're in Africa or whether we're in America. And it exists a lot more in America. And before we come to a conclusive statement, I want to say that if it is a hate crime to speak against the gays, the transgenders, and different groups of people, if it's a hate crime to speak against the Jews and speak disrespectfully about their experiences with the Holocaust, it should also be a hate crime to speak disrespectfully about the experiences that Africans had to go through in America through slave trade. I'm talking about the African American. It should be a hate crime to speak disrespectfully about their experiences here. Now, the conclusion is, are African Americans and Africans the same? Not necessarily culturally so, but by origins, African Americans and Africans are the same people. And by destiny, they are the same people, because in real actual fact, they are Africans, and so they generally are going to be lumped into a group or a mass of people called the African origins. So dear viewers, this is what I have for you today. African Americans and Africans are cousins. Not necessarily the same ethnicity, because even in Africa, the motherland, there's so many ethnicities, there's so many types of Africans. The Neolithic, they are the sorry for got the distraction there, an animal just went past. There are different types. They are the Hausa, they are the Yorubas, they are the Moors. There are different types of Africans, right? So we don't always agree because of different aspects, different issues of life. Maybe the cultural clashes, political turmoil, advantages, seeking of land, and different types of things. However, we are all Africans. And to deny that is to deny yourself for the wrong reasons. So, that is all for today. Follow, like, and comment on some of the things you think that I should make more videos about, and some of the things you have questions about. And if you do appreciate, click a like, smash the subscribe button, and let me know how you feel, and subsequently we should have more of such videos. I told you we are going to talk about political, financial, spiritual, religious, social, whatever that is plaguing society today. We shall be looking at historical things as well, and even scientific things, to see unanimously on this channel things with the same lens, and to be one people, and to spread the word throughout the world. Thank you for listening to the end. Next time, au revoir.